Alright, so today's lesson is a continuation from our previous tutorial on rigging. So today's part 2 rigging tutorial will focus more on creating new attributes as well as alternative ways to control your joints without using any constraints or using um, indirect connection. Okay, so we're not going to use this anymore. Okay, so first of all, before I go into that, there are some additional joints that I may have forgotten to add. But right now, as you can tell, if I were to select my joint, my skin itself, which is my mesh, will turn a magenta color. This is because it's saying that right now it's being controlled by my rig or on my joint. So you need to select your mesh, basically your skin. Go to skin. We are going to detach skin. Okay, so a couple of ways to detach your skin is either go to skin, detach skin, or you can simply go ahead and use your delete history. All right. So let's say I delete history, it no longer works. Okay. So let me go ahead and build one more joint here. Again, you should really make sure that your skeletal structure is sound before you skin your model. All right, so I'm going to go to my move tool. Okay, make sure it's an object so that it can move downwards. All right, and go to skeleton, insert joint tool. I'm going to select this joint, left mouse click and drag. Okay, move it somewhere where the fingers are. All right, I'm going to call this guy instead not fingers but palm. And this guy would be left fingers. Okay. So since right now I'm still at my skeletal stage, or if let's say I need to add something, and from the previous tutorial, it's really doesn't take long to create the constraints for my pole vector and whatnot. I can always redo those really quickly. But right now I'm just gonna show you what today's tutorial is about by adding new attributes and creating direct connections to your joints. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna go to I'm just gonna create a NURBS circle. So create NURBS primitive sphere. And I'm gonna hide my skin. Now, if you see colored joints, again, do not be alarmed. The colors simply means the weight of your skin. Okay, because each bone has an influence over your skin weight or your vertices. So there are ways to get back or create different colors. We will move to that towards the next part 3 of the rigging tutorial. Okay, so I'm just going to move this NURBS sphere to close to where my object is, and perhaps I want to move it to this wrist control. So I'm just gonna okay, and again, right now this seems to be a little too big, and let me set it to, let's say, 0.2. Okay, and I'm gonna name this guy left hand control. Okay. And I shall duplicate one more for the opposite hand. Okay. Name this guy the right hand control. And I'm just going to put a negative sign just to show you what happens. It should pop right at the opposite. Okay, so select the two objects and freeze transform. Okay, make sure that all three are selected on the translate, rotate, and scale. So the first thing is, because I want this control to only affect the joints here, and I'm not gonna use my translate, rotate, or scale. Okay, and since I'm not gonna use all of this, I should really lock it. Okay, let's say I lock selected, all this will be gray out, and if I were to use my move tool, this will be gray out too. This is to prevent your animators from animating or using this for any unintended intentions. So you can in fact also, let's say if you need to unlock it, you can unlock it if you ever need to make changes to it. But most of the time, for what I'll do, I'll just lock and hide selected. So when you lock and hide selected, you're not going to see any more of your attributes here. And if you do need to show your attributes again, you can always go to Window, General Editors, and I believe it's at Channel Control. Okay. So again, in Channel Control, because you have a lot more attributes on your object, so make sure to choose the right ones. So let's say rotate X, Y, and Z, scale X, Y, Z, and translate X, Y, Z. And I'm just gonna move it to keyable, okay, so that it will show up. And then I need to go to my lock tab and select all of this and move it to my non-lock so that I can keyframe it. Okay, so at this time I'm just gonna lock and hide selected. Okay, now by locking and hiding your attributes, there are some consequences that you will need to understand. Okay, for example, if I were to parent this to my wrist, because again, wherever the wrist goes, I want to make sure that this control will follow. So if I were to select my hand control and parent it to this wrist control by hitting P, okay, the object seems to have gone somewhere, well, right there. Okay, so it is not following. Now this is because I have already locked the attributes of my translate, rotate, and scale. So it is not able to make the right position. So let's say for my opposite control, okay, I did not lock all of these attributes. If I were to parent it to my wrist control, it will work. Okay, it will work perfectly. But for this, it is not going to work. So, but at the same time, I want to hide all my, again, my attributes that I do not want my animators to keyframe. So what can I do to really parent it this nicely? So what I need to do is I need to set up kind of a group. You can go to Edit and go to Group. Okay, I'm going to name this guy Left Hand Control Group. Okay, if I were to go to my window, Hypergraph Hierarchy, I should see something like this. This is the icon for group. Okay, and I have my objects. So right now with group selected, and I select my wrists control, hit parent. This will work perfectly. All right. So the next thing is I would want this control. I need to add some of my own attributes to control my joint. So how can I do that? You can access that function by going to modify, add attributes. Okay. So perhaps I want this control to have a clench fist. So I'll name this guy clench fist and make sure that it's keyable. Okay. In data type, there are two things that we would use very often, which is the float and integer. For basic rig, float includes your decimal places, and integer, of course, they are whole numbers. Okay, so right now I'm just going to set my minimum to, let's say, -5, maximum 10, and default 0. Now, default 0 is just so that when someone else open my file, it will default as this value. Okay, so hit add and do take note of what happens on the right panel in my channel box. So I hit add. Immediately I'm going to see a new attribute called clench fist for my left hand control. Okay, and if I were to do some quick tests, I have my 10 as my maximum and -5 as my minimum. Okay, so along the way, if you need to change the values of your new attributes, you can always select the objects, go to modify, edit attributes, and say, and look for clench fist, and maybe my minimum, I do not want it to be at this value, and maybe I want to set it to 90, and this one maybe at maybe 20, and make sure to hit enter key so that Maya will register the new values or the modified values. Okay, so right now if I were to do some tests, -90, 20. Okay. So the next thing that I would want to show you is go to Window, General Editors, and we are going to head over to Connection Editor. Now this is the first part, or the first way in which you can do a direct connection to your joints as to control how it would work. So in this case, your output would be your control and your input would be the joint. So I'm going to select my joint here, my left palm, and I'm going to reload right so that I can see all the attributes associated with the joint. And if I scroll down my left hand control all the way down, I would see the customized attributes that I have added earlier. So select that, and looking at my joints, go to rotate and look at which axis you would want to rotate. Okay, so the x-axis is the one that I would want to look for. So again, go and search for rotate. Now rotate by itself is going to be gray out because we really want to specify the axis, so you will need to expand rotate. Okay, so right now this is all in bold, means that we are able to select it. So if I were to select rotate X, both attributes would be in italics. This is to say that they are selected, and yes, they have a connection. So we are going to look at what that means. Select your hand control now. If I would go to my 20 and 90, so let's say at -90, right? If I select my joints on my rotate X, it will be -90. Okay, so you can tell that in fact it is a one-to-one value. So my new attribute is now controlling the rotational attributes of the x-axis of my joint. Okay, so this is a one-to-one kind of connection. So let's say I want to select my next joint, which is my finger joint. Okay, reload again. And again, rotate and rotate X. So now it becomes like this. So now I would be able to do this. Okay. Now, if I were to set one control for the entire chain of my hand, or let's say my fingers, the drawback of my control is that it will only allow whatever values, the minimum and maximum values that you have set initially. So let's say if my palm, I want it to be able to turn to 90 degrees and my finger at say 45 degrees, it is not going to happen. Okay, you will need to you will need to create separate or a different control to control the different joint values. Okay, or you can even have this control, maybe add like for example, I can add a new attribute, say first finger joint or something, and say minimum 90, sorry, minimum 90, maximum 10, default 0, okay, and add accordingly. And obviously Maya does not like that to have number. Okay, so I can add the first finger joint, then the second finger joint, and so on and so forth. I can always use this method to do it. So again, right now, if I want to delete away the that attributes, delete, and say that first finger joint, hit delete, and it will be gone. Okay, so if let's say you want multiple controls, or you need to have a much more stringent controls over your fingers, especially, you can create multiple attributes to do that. Okay, coming back to my connection editor, if I want to make any disconnection of my joint to my finger, you can always click my rotate X again in the connection editor. Okay, and it will be gone. So let's say I would do this. Oh, I need to click that again. Because it's still controlling this guy. Okay, so I want to select this, reload, and rotate it. Okay, to take it out. Now, if let's say you would have done this. Okay, one quick way of this connection, you can select both the objects, go to your channel box, rotate X, highlight it, right mouse button, and break connections. It is quicker that way. Okay, so now it will break all the connections. Okay, now to show you the alternative way of doing a control or that connection to your joints, to control your joints. We would need to go to Animate, Set Driven Key, go to Sets, okay, and you will see this panel here. Driver simply means your control, driven your joints. So select your control. You can go to Load, select as driver, or you can click Load Driver. Okay, and I'm going to select my joints. I can select both at the same time, load driven. Okay. Now, since both my joints has the same attributes, so I'm not too worried about which attributes that I might click on by mistake. So again, I know that it's that rotate X that I need. Okay, so I can select my objects by selecting my left-hand control in the driver panel. Okay, reflected in your viewport. So clench fist is at 0, which is my default. And since this is how my defaults would look like, I'm just gonna select both clench fist and my rotate X and hit key. Okay, and you'll find a red highlight on your joint. Means that it has been keyframed. Okay, set driven key is based on keyframing, whereas your connection editor is based on direct connection control. Okay, so right now, if I would select my hand control again and perhaps go to 20, okay, my maximum, and with this tool selection, I want to kind of rotate this around. Okay, let's say do something like this. So with this tool selected, okay, with this tool selected, I'll hit key. So what's going to happen is at 0, it's going to be at my relaxed pose, and if I were to move it, it would slowly clench in and out. Okay. Now I find that my maximum is at 20, right? But my minimum is at -90, and at this point of time, I find that that is way too much. I can always go back to modify, edit attributes, and let's say I'm gonna set this to -10 instead. Okay. Okay, so setting this at -10, I really would want to bend my fingers on my palm a little backwards, something like this. Okay, hit key. So right now I would have a good clench and also a good flick if I need to, or a good spread of my hands. All right, so these are two ways to create additional controls to connect to your joints without really selecting your joints. Okay, so some of the things you just need to take note of is, first of all, your controls. Again, it's a good practice to really lock and hide selected or lock and hide attributes that you do not want your animators to animate. And because you have lock and hide selected the translate, rotate, and scale, parenting that control to another control that have your translate XYZ, rotate, and whatnot, it's gonna create some weird things when you parent it to the control that you want. Okay, so again, do remember to create a group. Okay, you can go to edit, group. Let's see, right hand, control, group. Okay, so with a group itself, again, I'm just gonna show you real quick on your hypergraph. Okay, so with this, if I were to parent it to my wrist now, it will work. Okay, so this is ways that we can work around with, and groups is one of the things that will constantly pop up to help in your rigging process. All right, so for today's demonstration, we will end this with your connection editor, your set driven keys, your attributes, and I hope that you have learned at least something new. Thank you for watching.